Since before the apocalypse, I had always wanted to be a writer. I've had the creative itch ever since I started handling dangerous chemicals inside a poorly ventilated attic. One of the great revelations I recently came across is that duct tape doesn't always fix everything. Sometimes you also need a block of steel to make advanced repair kits. I was going to need plenty of repair kits because I was constantly under siege, but protracted wars against thousands of zombies is the perfectly average experience in Afterlife. And you know you've really made it when the zombies start sending the feral special forces in the forest biome. The bastards don't stand a chance. But tragically, these zombies will not be joining me for a very special event, because tonight was the blood moon, a special time when the moon attempts to murder me. And this time, I took it seriously. I began bashing concrete into existence. And even with a bronze mallet, this was a real bastard to pull off. My plan would be exactly the same as last week, but with one small change. I would separate myself from the horde with concrete instead of brick. Now that I possessed enough firepower to land me several life sentences, it was theoretically possible for me to survive if I stood in exactly one spot and fired my weapon until everything died. The only danger I faced was my attention deficit disorder. I made a trip back to my home and came back with an insatiable bloodthirst. I thirsted to break into this weird POI, the same one that was in the desert from a previous episode. As an aspiring writer, I needed to digest the contents of every book. Since the world was now a lawless wasteland, I was free to plagiarize the great works of literary masterminds. Even in the forest biome, the small Tier 2 POIs began housing a variety of feral zombie-like creatures. But I was adequately compensated with a quality 15,000 steel helmet. This would protect me from drowning myself during rainstorms. With sheer willpower, I transformed these brick blocks into solid concrete. I am very much a hands-on learner, and I gained a great deal of experience in the construction industry by mashing all my concrete inside these bricks. But most importantly, I finally learned to begin my construction projects early in the morning instead of literally the last hour before Horde Nights. Sometimes all it takes is for me to get brutalized by a feral lumberjack in order to learn things. It's a small price to pay for extremely useful knowledge. Timing is everything. It was perfect timing that the zombies respawned just as I finished completing my geometry fortress. It was time for my daily therapy session. I therapeutically warmed up my brain by crushing the skulls of my enemies. And it was after today that I had reached another point of no return. Because if humanity were to ever repopulate, if society were to ever rebuild itself, there's absolutely no way I would be able to reintegrate back into normalcy. Personally, I don't think it is reasonable to expect normalcy when the moon is trying to kill you every 7 days. The zombie legislative branch commands me to die during the 7-day period, and I had every intention of violating that law. Unlimited ammo, check. Drugs, check. Mega Crush, double check. Brain capacity, still pending. Quick drive-by federal crime spree, check. I forgot the spike traps. Spike traps are absolutely mandatory for making the annoying birds less annoying. Even the sky was mad at me for forgetting spike traps. I would be mad at myself too. And of course, these dorks just had to respawn behind my geometric masterpiece of a horde base. I had prayed and hoped that 7 spike traps would be enough to kill 50 trillion birds. But the best thing about hope is you're always allowed to hope. I prepared Horde Night by shoving a fistful of steroids into my brain. This doubles my carry weight and allows me to cripple my spine without any consequences. The Horde was now forming a vicious horde to take me down. My automated bird killing system began killing the birds, but I did shoot some down myself. And this is what I prepared for. This is why I did all that mining. The Horde was here, and I spared no expenses with my ammunition. And now it was getting serious. The game determined that a radioactive Mo would be an adequate challenge for me. But it doesn't matter if Mo is a rat, a feral, or even a regular. Mo is just Mo, and Mo is the dumbest zombie. Also, is it strange that I find the ragdoll book slightly annoying? Ragdolling makes sense for clubs because that is fair and balanced, but with fully automatic weapons, it just makes it tougher for me to get headshots. But perhaps that is the balancing factor for automatic weapons. After the enemy is ragdolled, I am required to spend 30 bullets to kill that same zombie. Ah, yes, that's good. Run directly into my line of fire. The zombies were very good at blocking bullets with their faces. This is what makes them the apex predators on planet Earth. But something was horribly wrong. There was a distinct lack of horde during this horde night. I wondered if the stupid zombies had stupidly caught themselves on a wall, because only a few were present. I absolutely have it on 64 zombies, and while my game stage is relatively low, the game should still be spawning tremendous death balls of ferals and rats at this point. I was being bombarded by exactly one rock thrower, which is about 20 less than what I am accustomed to. I was very confused about this. I typed several question marks into the video game, knowing that it would do absolutely nothing for me. My brain is still in development, and I cannot claim to know everything. I can hardly claim to know anything, but something was definitely borked. This was the day 28 horde. I should have been dead 5 times over already. This green spider slightly agitated me, but aside from that, the moon had thoroughly failed to deliver any real threats to my existence. This Arlene wasn't even part of the horde. She was just a wandering zombie that didn't despawn when horde night started. This was, well and truly, the damnedest thing. I played tag with another Arlene who also wasn't part of the horde. But even though this horde night was thoroughly bugged, it still delivered 1,000 birds onto me. I deliberately exited my automated bird killing system because I was legally required to engage in conflict. Also, I wanted to spare my spike traps because I was too lazy to replace them after horde night. But now I had received another visitor. I greeted my guest by shooting him directly in the eyes. But that was it. I had soundly defeated the horde. Whoever was in charge of killing me to death had evidently taken a vacation. I looked around in the Afterlife Discord, and one other person had reported a similar experience. It was also on the day 28 horde night. Whatever this bug was, it specifically affected the day 28 horde. I ended the night by maliciously stealing gas from this gas station and went home in a state of permanent confusion. I meditated over what happened by stealing liquor from a mechanic shop. I was getting close to unlocking some steel armor, so I was up to my book-burning shenanigans once again. Plus, I was trying to loot a new hammer because building concrete with a bronze mallet is like sitting on a cactus for several hours straight. I was carrying entirely too much ammo, and I wanted to trade them in for copious amounts of zombie blood. I negotiated a deal with the zombies that I would kill them to death in exchange for several hundred literature fragments. And I'm genuinely impressed with the book count in this modest restaurant. And while I was inflicting damage to other people's property, something began to bother me. I couldn't remember what was bothering me because I was too busy vandalizing property, but I'm sure it would come back to me later. I continued my raiding journey some more. The quality of armors was gradually increasing even in the forest biome. Dual-wielding pistols, I've never seen this before in my life. I had absolutely no ammunition for it, but I would definitely keep these weapons inside of my thoughts. One of these bastard boxes will surely have a claw hammer for me. I would also accept a nail gun. However, I found my 10th steel sledgehammer, but I had discovered exactly 0 tools, because of course I didn't find tools in a tool store. Steve slapped the piss out of me while I stuck my face inside of this box. The zombie strategy of running straight into my gun was certainly effective, but it was not necessarily effective for the zombies. Okay, so I did find an iron shovel. Not what I was looking for, but it does show my eligibility to loot claw hammers in the crappy forest biome. And now it was time to stick entirely too many fragments into armor crafting magazines. And I continued printing entirely too many papers and fuel. I took a quick count of my ammunition and found that my crate was still absolutely stuffed with ammunition. This was a strange feeling. I was not accustomed to this at all. My brain had geolocated another pirate treasure, and I claimed my inheritance, well over 8,000 gold from this chest. There's not really a lot you can do with coins in this mod. The biggest expenditures you can make is buying a gun from a vending machine. But the vending machines do not have anything special. I can already craft the best shotgun in the game. All I could really do was buy entirely too much candy from other vending machines. I converted fuel into motor fuel, which is used for the motorized tools. Now I can bother everyone in a 50-mile radius with my extremely noisy auger. The bad news is that I will not be using the auger very often because it is not really a mining tool. It is extremely overpowered for digging, however, which is still useful for mining adjacent purposes. And as we can see, it's all tier 1 and tier 2 guns in the vending machine, not enormously useful for me at the present moment. I can, however, jam a bunch of gold and silver in the coin exchange machine, and the machine will intelligently produce old coins for me. Then, I continued the long journey of clearing out a modest sum of POIs in my local city. I needed to depopulate the area so the next generation of humanity could someday live here. And when I say the next generation of humanity, I definitely mean the next generation of zombie humans. The rebuilding of civilization would go against my best interests anyway, because I've gone too far down this rabbit hole. There was simply no way I could reintegrate back into society. The concept of law and order was completely absent from my monkey brain. All I know is how to shoot and or loot. Shooting and or looting had taught me to use dark sorcery to make illegal munitions and literature. Why would I need society when I was already my own society? But maybe this whole thing was a delusional episode. Perhaps I was a zombie all along, and I was conflicting with normal humanity this entire time. Not that any of this is bad or anything, I'm just simply the worst person living his best life in a world where the best people are living their worst lives. But all of this thinking over philosophy was hurting my brain. I needed to pass the time by throwing rocks at a large group of zombies. A good strategy for dealing with these gigantic hordes is to group all of them up with rocks and throw Molotov cocktails at them. I didn't have any Molotovs at this time, so I was just playing a cruel prank on the zombies. But today was now tomorrow, and I drove into the land of never-ending Christmas. This direwolf commanded me to shoot it several times in the head in exchange for one of those juicy red loot bags with an overly inflated loot stage. How could I resist? I was even rewarded with a pair of 15k quality steel gloves. I'll take what I can get. And then I continued my adventures by absolutely violating the Geneva Convention with my auger. This thing is a pleasure to use when you're digging up pirate treasure, and the treasures lately have been getting very generous. I discovered new employment opportunities in a brand new city. New employment opportunities meant new trader compounds for me to raid. Trader Q was noticeably absent from his compound. I don't entirely know what happened to these traders, but it is likely they encountered significant hazards to their health at some point in this mod. The alcohol flowed, and these crates gave exceedingly useful loot. This one produced a nice battery bank for me to power my home with. And finally, after tirelessly searching for half of an eternity, I received a gosh darn claw hammer, an exceptionally useful construction tool. Of course, it was only after I spent an eternity constructing my horde base. But I was just happy to be here anyway. And it's just my luck that these traders were degenerate alcoholics. And while on the subject of degenerate alcoholics, the game had clearly stated that it was tired of my shenanigans. It began sending the absolute worst of the worst at me, even in the Christmas version of my own home. The planet was especially radioactive lately, if the zombies were anything to go by. And even with my advanced military hardware, these radiated whites were absolute bastards to kill. You wouldn't think a shirtless zombie could take so much damage, but here we are. I absorbed copious amounts of literature into my biomass, even though I was technically eligible to loot green quality steel armors, and even though armor in general is pretty easy to find. Steel armor itself is still a bastard to find. But I was feeling spicy. I had already burned most of a day grinding the same POIs. It was time for a custom-made POI. And ah yes, just as I suspected, there's about 3,000 radiated zombies inside of here. I cannot say I would be surprised to see this many rads in a custom-made POI because that would be dishonest. I needed to be careful, but first it was time for me to respectfully chop up these dead bodies. I needed to be extra sneaky because the community center had a community of deadly zombies inside of it. But I did make a fascinating discovery while I was sneaking. The amount of a sneaking experience gained is based on how many zombies you're sneaking by. And because there were several zombies in close proximity, I was farming up a ton of experience. This was a special opportunity, and I took it. I had every intention of farming up entirely too much stealth points. I am a shameless bastard when it comes to grinding base progression, and I never get to do it in 7 days to die. Strangely, I've never been the type to just sneak around a POI. However, stealth is the best way to level up my agility stat. Agility gives me movement speed and increases my jump height. Parkour is absolutely not a perk in this hardcore survival mod, but I had a chance to maliciously abuse game mechanics in order to increase my jump height. I would commit war crimes for the parkour perk in this mod. In fact, I have committed several war crimes already without any incentives, but I would now seize the opportunity to mindlessly grind out some experience for my own benefit. Now it was nighttime and my stealth jumped 30 levels in a short amount of time. I called that good enough, and I made the decision to drive in the terrifying night. I had gained a level and a half and several agility levels as well. Later testing would show that I am absolutely trash at stealthing still, but that is okay. And I just can't help but admire how good nighttime looks. I sincerely wish the base game was like this. One might think that this game looks dark during the night, but I can assure you it can get much, much darker. Because right now the moon is out, and a little moonlight goes a long way. It was yet another productive day, and tomorrow would be even more productive, but something was missing still. Something was missing, and I don't mean my brain activity after drinking several bottles of wine. I also don't mean I was missing an advanced bellows, which is the best possible thing I can add to my forge. I definitely wasn't missing the endless amount of hordes loitering outside of my home. I had been scammed out of my day 28 horde. I was missing conflict, and I desired it. Getting drunk and bashing at iron rocks was a poor substitute for Horde Night. I made the conscious decision to astrally project my soul into the inner workings of the universe, and by that I mean to say I exited the game and changed Horde Night frequency to 1 day. It's time to load up. Ammunition is like money. There's genuinely no point in having a lot of ammunition if you can't spend it. And I wonder why I'm poor. Theoretically, this was going to be a perfectly normal Horde Night. I wouldn't be happy until I was being sieged by 10 stone throwers while having 50 birds squawking endlessly into my ear. I needed an excuse to use my brand new claw hammer, so I tore down all this useless wood and iron. I hoped I wouldn't be dumb enough to steal myself inside a concrete prison. But as it turns out, I had just barely enough brain activity to leave myself a nice little exit. And I replaced some of the broken blocks with brand new concrete. I didn't mind the horde bashing away at the gas station because this building is perfectly expendable. All I needed to do was maintain my fighting position, but I did care just enough to make sure my fighting position would have adequate support. And there is a small possibility that I have been taking college courses on electricity. And when I say college courses, I mean I turned literature fragments into wiring magazines, and I definitely didn't regret scrapping all those wiring magazines before, because I've never regretted anything in my life. The best place to position electric fence posts is out in the open where stone throwers can shoot directly at them. But I had assumed, perhaps correctly, that the stone throwers were gentlemen and definitely wouldn't chuck stones at my very sensitive fence posts. But I did it. I was finally smart enough to not only invent electricity, but also wire everything, except I forgot my wire cutters, so I ran back to my base. But that was perfectly fine because I also needed to retrieve my ammo. And wait just 1 second, I absolutely need to do something real fast. Look, if the zombies are going to just cluster up like that, there's no way I'm not going to chop them down with an automatic shotgun. The thunders of Horde Night sounded off in my brain. I needed to shatter my spine with entirely too much ammo, drugs, food, alcohol, and more alcohol for tonight. For the first actual time, for real this time, it would just be me versus the Horde. No cheese tactics for tonight. I would need to kill them before they killed me. And yes, I did remember to bring my wire cutters. I'm definitely not stupid enough to forget anything twice. But I am absolutely stupid enough to wire one of my fences behind my actual fighting position. I'm just gonna fix that real quick. Horde Night had started, and the birds began inflicting psychological damage to my brain. But I took great pleasure knowing that my automated bird-killing spike traps were working. But I did not take great pleasure in being assaulted by geometry. Horde Night had began honestly this time. No buggy spawns or cheesy shenanigans on my end. But the Horde would unleash unspeakable geometric horrors every time I got a decapitation. But I was focused on combat. Oh god, more geometry. That's a lot of geometry. I wasn't entirely sure how to solve this geometry problem. The universe was clearly unstable. But besides being assaulted by several pieces of geometry, Horde Night was going extremely well. Even the demolition zombies exploded into several geometric shapes after being shot directly into the face. My reload speeds were adequate, my ammunition was extremely healthy, I could waste as much ammo as I wanted. This stupid demo zombie ran directly into my shotgun, which set him off, of course. But the video game began favoring me because the explosion only did the slightest bit of damage, which was absolutely undeserved, but I will gladly accept gifts. But no amount of geometry and violence could ever prepare me for the complete horror that was waiting for me. The game had determined that this zombie behemoth would be an adequate test for my military capabilities. I was grateful that the gas station was exactly tall enough to keep him out of my fighting position. I don't know what his stats are, but I intended to dump several magazines into his face. I was sure he could kill me in one shot. Being pelted by stones didn't help, but I used cheese tactics to take him down. His body transformed into a gigantic pile of gore. I was now at the tail end of Horde Night. I only needed to kill a few stragglers to end Horde Night. I began to inefficiently harvest this gore pile with my pathetic shiv. It wasn't until after it broke that I learned the axe was the optimal harvesting tool for gore blocks. This behemoth had chewed straight through concrete as though it were cobblestone. Stuff like this was why I preferred to build fighting positions on top of POIs instead of just building horde bases from scratch, because that behemoth would have instantly destroyed a concrete brace and stomped me several times over before the night ended. But that was that. Beating concrete into existence with a clawhammer was wildly more efficient than a bronze mallet, but I strongly desired a nail gun because that would be wildly more efficient. It's never good enough for me. But repairing a block will always be a process, even with a nail gun. That's why killing zombies with military-grade firepower is paramount for survival. I returned home and shockingly had quite a bit of ammo left still. But I was satisfied. The moon had made a sincere attempt on my life this time around. I realize now that the moon was actually mocking me on the bugged Day 28 Horde. The moon had botched that Horde night because it took pity on me, but I didn't need its pity. But I did need copious amounts of alcohol for mining in the desert, and no, I didn't bring water. But I continued my education on building decent quality armors. The time had arrived. I could craft a quality 28k steel armor, which is about a green quality, and it was leaps and bounds better than the pathetic brown quality iron armor that I was wearing. The jump in armor rating would allow me to die in 4 hits from a feral biker instead of 2. And while that might sound pitifully bad, an extra 2 hits allows me to cower in fear of my life and escape most fights. It was at this point that I completely lost track of what day it was. Changing the blood moon frequency had scrambled my mind. But now I was properly armored. I had the distinguished honor of inserting 2 entire mods on my chest piece. I barely know what to do with even just one mod. And then I crafted more bird catchers, highly recommended for these kind of horde nights. And yes, I had forgotten to bring the repair materials for my electric fences. I returned with the forgotten materials and was greeted by an enormous wandering death ball of zombies. That was okay, I was behind enough concrete to survive a small nuclear blast. Somehow, I ended up with more zombies than my horde knights. The zombies displayed immaculate team spirit. All the ferals were stuck behind the jog speed basic zombies. It took them several years to get to my fighting position, and while hilarious, it did drag out this ordeal 10 minutes longer than it needed to be. I need you all to die faster, please. Speaking of dying faster, tonight is going to be another Horde night. I've been in a spicy mood lately, but I needed to pass some time. In this footage, I had figured out a really fun way to deal with the constant threats of gigantic wandering hordes. Molotov cocktails are exceptionally easy to make in this mod, especially with a chemistry station, and it's still easy even without a chemistry station, because with 1 jar of fuel and 5 pieces of cloth, you too can create a bottle capable of inflicting massive destruction. Without a chem station, one could easily siphon fuel from a car. The cloth should also be easy to come by. Step 1, throw a rock. Step 2, wait for stupidity. Step 3, apply fire to highly flammable substance. And that is the secret to having fun in 3 easy steps. I cannot imagine how bad that must smell over there. The tricky part for me was getting my aim right, especially when throwing far distances. Unfortunately, the next wandering horde inexplicably contained a blue-eyed smart zombie. The bastards can sense you from literally the far end of a screen. In this footage, the smart zombie geolocated my position and relayed it to the zombie horde. My cheese tactics were not to be tolerated. The bastards injected whispers into my brain. The voices were telling me to destroy humanity. Humanity was already destroyed, but I pretended the zombies were part of humanity, and I began mowing them down. Oh, look at that. It's another death ball of zombies. Even I was surprised how much value I was getting out of a small bottle of flammable liquid. It's too bad these guys won't be joining me for tonight's Horde Night. It's just my luck that repairing electric fence posts consumes iron ingots. I was already carrying a spine-shattering amount of ammunition, and the extra iron ingots did me no favors. It was time for me to wall off part of my house since the zombies have become exceptionally present lately. I carted my fat, heavy self to my base and found another wandering horde near my base. I respect their punctuality and enthusiasm. I rewarded them by beating their heads in with the medieval weapon. I made the extremely intelligent decision to wall off my electric fence posts. That way, they wouldn't die horribly from a single stone thrower. I shoved an entire bottle of Fort Bites down my stupid face, and I was immediately greeted by a fleet of screaming deathpeckers. Once again, the moon had set out to kill me by summoning several waves of feral hordes. I was only separated by a small amount of concrete, but the great thing about concrete is that it is concrete. It's amazing what a small piece of electric wire can do to a handful of feral zombies. Occasionally, a spider zombie will climb to my position, and would anyone fault me for wanting to do a kill-all command on these pecker birds? I didn't do it, but I sure was tempted. The goddamn birds just don't stop coming. They even ate up all of my spike traps. The zombies were noticeably more numerous, the ferals were more aggressive, the birds were extra bird-like, and the stone throwers were just stone throwers. And my concrete horde base stood strong against the zombies. Bashing your head and ruining your bare hands against concrete is never the solution, but don't tell the zombies that. The zombie strategy of barreling straight towards my shotgun worked wonders for them. I could not have asked for a better outcome. I now realize that it doesn't matter whether I have a monkey brain or not. It doesn't matter if my raging alcoholism negatively affected my mind, because at the end of the day, nothing I can do will ever make me as dumb as these zombies. I spent the next few minutes standing perfectly still in the same spot, dumping several shells directly in front of me. Things were calming down after just a few minutes. I even had enough time to bash the concrete back into its place. I never saw another zombie behemoth in tonight's horde. I had wondered if the zombie behemoth from the previous night was the same one I saw on day one of this playthrough. But that was that. I played Horde Night the way it was intended. I want to clarify that I am absolutely not above standing on a rooftop and gaining an unfair advantage on every Horde Night. But in most of my playthroughs, I just wait until I unlock concrete before attempting to build Horde bases. I finished off the weird little stragglers, and I collected the loot. I think it's great that loot bags have exactly the things I need in order to survive the next day. It's very convenient. This radioactive zombie was hiding, and I punished him severely for his cowardice. I was then assaulted by more geometry. The world was clearly unstable. I was not long for this world. Or more accurately, the world was not long for itself. Just like how this gas station is not long for existence. Highly satisfying. But only one gas pump remained. This was the final gas pump in the universe, and I decided to steal from it. There are other gas pumps as well. Those are also the last gas pumps in the universe. And so ends the tale of several blood moons. All that was left in the apocalypse are the stragglers. There just happens to be a million upon millions of stragglers. Thank you all so much for watching and liking the series. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I appreciate everybody's support, and I will see you guys on the next one.